Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The person is a woman in their 40s and she is stable.
BC reports its first case of a rare blood clotting disorder after a woman receives the AstraZeneca vaccine. Also,
I just ran to the bathroom and cried and screamed, and it was probably the worst moment of my whole life.
A mother's anguish, her plea for more addiction services after her 12-year-old daughter dies from a suspected overdose. And
so now we have more property than we need.
Seller beware.
Here's the original 1940s cabin.
Why a BC couple is being sued by their real estate agency after the buyer backed out.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. A woman who got the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine is BC's first case of a rare blood clotting disorder.
BC's top doctor stresses the patient is doing well and is reminding people who have had that vaccine that it is safe. Dan Burrett joins us live with more on today's COVID update. Dan, first, what do we know about the patient?
She's in her 40s. She lives in Vancouver Coastal Health, and she noticed some symptoms 5 or 6 days after she got the AstraZeneca vaccine. Officials say she went to her doctor. They suspected her condition might be related to the vaccine. They did a blood test. It showed low platelet counts, and she got sent for treatment. As we mentioned, she's now stable. The symptoms of this rare side effect include a lingering severe headache, chest or abdominal pain, shortness of breath, and swelling or redness in a limb. Dr. Bonnie Henry says they may appear between 4 and up to 28 days after you get the vaccine. It's important for people to recognize symptoms and get help if need be. But she stresses the chances of these symptoms are 1 in 100,000. And the AstraZeneca is safe and effective.
I know that many people have had a lot of anxiety about that. So take a deep breath and be reassured that this is rare, that physicians know what to do, and that if you have any concerns, that you contact your healthcare provider. You can go to the emergency department if it's severe, and also you can call 811 and we can get you assessed and treated if needed.
Henry notes they used a lot of AstraZeneca vaccine to tackle the COVID outbreak in Whistler. She adds lots of Pfizer and Moderna doses are arriving in BC very soon.
And as a result, Dan, a big push to target people in high transmission areas for vaccination?
Correct. BC is closing in on 2 million vaccinations now. That's out of a population of about 5 million, just over. And officials are now focusing on more high transmission areas in 2 of our biggest health authorities. In Fraser Health, officials are immunizing people 30 and older in parts of Guildford and Cloverdale and Surrey, central, eastern and rural Abbotsford, southeast and southwest Burnaby, Willoughby and Langley, and South Mission. That's on top of areas from North Delta to West Abbotsford, South Langley to Whalley. In Vancouver Coastal Health, health staff will go after people 30 and older in 8 Vancouver neighborhoods specifically: Cedar Cottage, Grandview Woodland, Hastings Sunrise, Kensington, Killarney, Renfrew Collingwood, Sunset, and Victoria Fraser View. Back in Fraser Health, the authority is setting up kiosks to get people vaccinated or registered for vaccines. One's at Guildford Mall, that was held today. 2 will be held tomorrow, one at Strawberry Hill Shopping Centre and one at Superstore on 120th and 82nd at Delta. Some doctors and business leaders have been pushing that vaccinations open to everyone in Surrey. BC's Health Minister again urges people to register and book a vaccine when they're allowed.
Frontline workers have been given priority in Surrey. That's important. We're going to be giving priority to Surrey more than any other large community in the province, because what's happening here in Surrey is obviously significant in terms of transmission, and vaccination is one of the ways that we can address that.
Dix notes the other way to address that is to follow the public health orders. Anita, Mike?
All right, Dan, thanks very much. Dan Burrett with us live tonight. And BC is reporting 694 new cases of COVID-19 this evening and 1 death. The number of patients in hospital is at 457. That's the lowest since April 20th. 154 are in intensive care.
The province is stepping up its COVID-19 vaccine rollout. People 40 and older will be able to book as early as next week. Starting tomorrow, those aged 46 and older will be able to book an appointment. On Sunday, people 43 or older will have their turn. And starting on Tuesday, those 40 or older will get their chance to book. Meanwhile, hospitality staff in the Vancouver Coastal Health region are now eligible to book the vaccine regardless of age. The BC Restaurant and Food Association says clinics will start this weekend. The RCMP's road checks to support the ban on non-essential travel are now underway. Checkpoints are located on 4 highways connecting southwest BC with the rest of the province. Police are currently stationed in Manning Park. You can see here along Highway 3, and that's until 8 p.m. tonight. They will be rotating the road check locations until the May-long weekend. The other 3 include Highway 1 near Boston Bar, Highway 5 in the old toll booth area, and Highway 99 in Lillooet.
So if an officer does decide that a person is traveling for non-essential reasons, they will be asked to turn around. The goal here is not to be putting out fines. Really, the goal is to encourage people to stay local. So that's what we're doing. We're asking people to turn around and return to their home base.
Police say the signage will alert drivers to upcoming checkpoints. Commercial vehicles aren't affected, and people who refuse to turn around may face a fine of up to $575, and, well, they'll still be forced to turn around.
A BC family is mourning the loss of a beloved father and husband after the 57-year-old lost his battle to COVID-19.
As Isabel Regam reports, his wife says one of the hardest parts was not being able to say goodbye in person.
I think there's Tammy before this and maybe Tammy after this.
4 weeks after losing her husband to COVID-19, Tammy Chernoff cannot believe how quickly the virus took him away.
He was the love of my life.
She says her husband, Bill Chernoff, developed what seemed like a minor cough in mid-March. A week later, he was in the ICU battling the virus for 15 days. The last time they spoke was on a video call from the hospital.
Bill was hooked up to machines and he had tubes and everything, but I could see Bill in his eyes and I was going, I love you, right? We're going to make it through this.
2 days later, on April 8th, he died. Chernoff was 57.
I didn't know I was saying goodbye to my husband.
The two were married for nearly 20 years.
Happy birthday to you.
She says they were best friends who were always joking around. Bill was a natural inventor and a man of a million projects.
He just had a million wacky contraptions. He just loved to have fun. As you get in here and you put your seatbelt on and you roll around in it.
From the fear sphere and a spoon for his grandfather with Parkinson's.
So that even if his grandpa was shaking, the food would not fall out of the spoon.
To creating high-tech devices used in operating rooms.
And this is the surgery robot.
Bill Chernoff spent most of his days in his shop coming up with new ideas.
He would have been programming here, soldering here.
His next endeavor was to build his own 2-seater helicopter. He was a thrill seeker, a prankster, a kind father to his 2 sons, and a loving uncle to his nieces and nephews. As to how or where he caught the virus, Chernoff doesn't know, noting the pair had followed COVID safety measures carefully. Bill's loved ones can't gather right now, so celebration of life will be held once the pandemic is over. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Chilliwack.
A Vancouver Island mother whose 12-year-old daughter died last month is pleading for more long-term drug treatment programs at facilities for children.
She suspects her daughter died from a heroin overdose. As Mira Baines reports tonight, child advocates say there's a gap in those services.
Adriana Londano got the news of her daughter's death in a phone call.
I was in shock. I'm still in shock. And I didn't know how to process it. I just ran to the bathroom and cried and screamed, and it was probably the worst moment of my whole life.
Londano tells Czech News her daughter Alia, who went by Ali, died on April 14 in hospital in Victoria after overdosing on drugs at a friend's home in Langford. The BC Coroner Service says her daughter Alia Thomas's death is under investigation, but has not yet confirmed how she died. Londano says her family tried to get her help, but was told her daughter was too young to qualify for rehab services at a facility.
There needs to be a rehab facility for kids under 14 or her age, because we can't have 12-year-olds dying like this.
She described Ali as sweet and loving and said she wanted to be a makeup artist, but her life took a turn last year. Londano says her daughter started experimenting with drugs, including methamphetamine and heroin, at the age of 11. She says Alia, who had overdosed before, was living with her grandparents, who also tried to get her help.
They just sent us counselor numbers and all outreach workers and all these things that really weren't enough. Like, she needed to go to rehab.
BC's Child and Youth Representative Jennifer Charlesworth says there are significant gaps in treatment services.
Most of the services treatment programs that we've got are designed for older children. So it's a wake-up call for us to think, well, developmentally, how would we work with these young people? And 12-year-olds shouldn't be with 16-year-olds either.
Since BC declared a public health emergency 5 years ago, 90 children have died from toxic drugs. The Ministry of Children and Family Development says it cannot comment due to privacy restrictions, but it is normal to review these types of cases. Landano, who has struggled with mental health and addiction issues from a young age herself, says kids should not be afraid to ask for help.
I want people to be aware of how many people are dying every day from these drugs, and that people shouldn't be scared, kids shouldn't be scared to tell their parents what they've done.
Landano encourages families to have a naloxone kit at home to reverse opioid overdoses. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
A 24-year-old man is now facing a murder charge in the shooting death of a woman in Surrey. 20-year-old Carrie-Anne Arsenault was found with gunshot wounds in Surrey's Guildford neighborhood. She later died in hospital. Ali Kudair is charged with second-degree murder. Anyone with information on the shooting is asked to call police.
Demonstrators took to Richmond City Hall today to rally against anti-Asian hate crimes.
As Canadian citizens, we have the right and duty to stand up and stand together to fight hate crime and to fight discrimination.
They're demanding Richmond RCMP address concerns regarding safety and anti-Asian hate crimes. Organizers hand-delivered a letter calling on police to take more action against suspects.
Such extraordinary times that we're all living through right now with the pandemic, with the rise in anti-Asian hate crime and all the disturbing things that are going on in that vein. And to have a place like this, I think, serves us all well.
Amid the rise in anti-Asian hate crime, the VPD is opening Community Policing Center in Chinatown this week. The new location is next to the Chinese Cultural Center and Courtyard. It's part of an effort to bring back street-level presence to the historic community.
A warning tonight from a Fraser Valley man for those selling their homes in our red-hot real estate market.
As Bethany Lindsay reports, it's about your realtor's commission and how you may be on the hook for it, even when the buyer backs out of a sale.
Mike Armstrong's kids love spending their summers on Lake Ayrock near Mission.
Here's the 100-foot zip line I put in, 15 or 16 years ago that the kids love, and some adults dangerously plummet from.
But the kids are all grown, and Mike and his wife have moved to another property on the lake full-time.
So now we have more property than we need.
So about 4 years ago, they decided to put their 2 cabins on the market. They found a realtor in White Rock and signed a listing agreement.
His office, Century 21, represented the buyer as well as us, the seller. So what eventually happened after a few months is we had an offer that he encouraged us to accept, and we did.
But when the closing date came, the buyer was nowhere to be found. The buyer forfeited $70,000 in deposits to the Armstrongs.
So we thought we were going to relist with Century 21 in the spring.
Instead, they were served with a lawsuit. The brokerage was demanding payment of their commission. Despite the windfall from the deposits, the Armstrongs would actually lose money on the deal.
It was just strange. You hire a realtor to sell your property. It seems like that's their purpose in life.
It turns out the standard listing contract he signed says all the brokerage needs to get commission is a legally enforceable contract of sale. The sale doesn't have to complete. Mike Armstrong turned to Paul Kowig for help.
It's very rare for a seller to get sued for commission. In my 40 years, plus years, I personally don't know of it ever happening.
Coig was the professional standards advisor for the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board.
Generally speaking, we don't sue sellers. We just sell the house to someone else.
Representatives of the brokerage did not respond to our request for comment. Their lawsuit points out that the buyer's deposit is almost enough to cover the commission and says it would be unjust to be sent away empty-handed. As for Mike Armstrong, he's relisted one of his properties with a new agency.
They were happy to put in writing that they would not sue us if the buyer they found did not complete the transaction.
Bethany Lindsay, CBC News, Vancouver.
Some good news for the marine industry in BC. North Vancouver's Seaspan Shipyards has been chosen to build a new polar icebreaker for the Canadian Coast Guard.
To now have a polar icebreaker back in the package is absolutely incredible news. It's going to create a lot of work here.
The province expects the project to bring 1,400 jobs at Seaspan and hundreds more at other BC companies up the supply chain.
Joined now by CBC meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe and a Bernese mountain dog that apparently doesn't...
here.
Oh, yes, other shoulder, yeah. Doesn't mind the looming threat of showers, I guess.
Yes, I think we've got the B team Night's Watch behind me, looking out for the the cold front. Now, the cold front is actually through. That was the heavy rain most of us in Metro Vancouver experienced in the past hour. Showers, though, still on tap this evening. Take a look at the radar right now. We've got that cold front that slid through in the past hour. That's now moving between Abbotsford and Chilliwack. But then look at those showers sneaking up from the south just in the past couple of frames. Richmond Delta, you're getting into those showers. I'd say they'd be coming down downtown and North Van any minute now. They're much lighter than that main front. But this is the story for the next couple of days. Through our Friday and through our Saturday, it's just generally unsettled. You can see even some lightning strikes being picked up up towards the Sunshine Coast and Central Coastal sections. This is the instability behind that cold front. It is a cold front, so temperatures are coming down in the forecast. 15 right now at YVR. That's about our 30-year average for this time of the year. Here are tomorrow's forecast highs, just 13s and 14s across Metro Vancouver. Even some 11s and 12s not out of the question. So it's going to feel like a chillier Friday. And it's as if I planned this myself. The showers have just started. I didn't even get alert from the dog, but the showers are here again.
Give it time, give it time. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Rodney.
You're welcome.
And I think even thank you, Wesley, who we may have.
Wesley was on watch too. You heard his alert. Yes.
Very good. Okay, Joe, thanks. Talk to you again in a bit. Well, that wayward black bear captured in Gastown yesterday has been set free. Conservation officers released it at an undisclosed wilderness location, somewhere that would give the young bear the best chance for survival. The Bruin was spotted on the train tracks downtown. It appears it followed the green belt from a more remote area.
And a reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver, also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
With plenty of vaccine arriving in Canada, where does the country sit in its efforts to vaccinate Canadians? That's coming up.
.617, thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, Nova Scotia craft brewers are looking to attract the everyday beer consumer.
That means expanding their offerings to include light beers along with the crisp flavored drinks. Matthew Moore raises his glass for us in this report.
For some, this is the sound of summer. Beer lovers have never been hard up for choice. Big beer companies like Bathe and Molson Coors have in recent years begun brewing beyond their classic brands, choosing to expand their lineups with new beers that are stronger, pack more of a punch. Beers that compete with the flavors of craft brewers. But as popular as the craft brewing market has become, the market for lighter fare is still going strong.
Currently, less than 10% of the beers sold at the NSLC are craft beers, so 90% of the beer that's consumed is still the mass market. Those big brands that that's used to. So trying to reach more of the local consumer that they can consume a product and support a local brewery.
Breton has released Island Time, a lighter beer. It's now their second biggest seller. Most of the customers are still coming in to enjoy the more flavorful beers. But brewers are working to create beer for the everyday beer drinker.
You know, the way we look at it, 10% is great, but you know, what the heck are the other 90% drinking? You know, when they could be drinking local.
Once there was a time where craft brewers would turn their nose up to such a beer. Light beers were considered taboo. However, local brewers in the past number of years realized the value in reaching the broader market. And that's what Brian Titus says fueled the plan to create a 12-pack light beer at Garrison. The goal is to attract people heading to the cottage for a long weekend with these crushable bevies.
Love to drink, you know, your product, but you know, too malty, too hoppy, too whatever, right? Too expensive, maybe even. But those days, honestly, are largely gone. Those kind of beers very much exist, and there's very much a demand for it. But increasingly, it's light beers. It's you know, super refreshing, whether they're blondes or wheat ales. But in particular, just light in alcohol and increasingly light in calorie, and you know, a beer that would rival very much what a you know, what a large producer would make.
Titus says this means people who don't like big, bold beers will still be able to support craft. Matthew Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
Never mind big, bold beers. I know this won't be the popular opinion, but I don't like any beer.
Well, you signaled that when you said, what's an everyday, what was it, an everyday beer?
Everyday beer drinker.
Everyday beer drinker,
It's not me.
Well, usually a person that drinks beer every day.
Thanks,
and
Mike.
maybe doesn't like the barley, like the big barley sandwiches, like a Guinness or something like that, but something a little lighter, you know, less filling, tastes great. Now I'm sounding like a beer. Now I'm sounding
You're
like
an
an old
everyday
beer
beer
commercial.
guy.
Okay, we're back in just a sec. More news from across the country at 6:20. A live look at downtown Vancouver on this Thursday evening.
Age restrictions around vaccines have been loosened.
And as that happens, the Public Health Agency of Canada says it's ready to meet increasing demand.
As CBC's Hannah Thibodeau tells us, their reassurance comes with the news 18 million doses of vaccine have been distributed Canada-wide.
Everywhere across the country, I think there's new energy and there's new optimism.
Optimism after Health Canada approved the use of the Pfizer vaccine for ages 12 and up. But concern about supply. Will there be enough doses to add this age group and still be able to vaccinate all eligible people with 2 doses by September?
$1.63 million since is less than a week's worth of Pfizer doses. So there will be sufficient vaccines in the country to vaccinate earlier than initially anticipated with the first dose. All those Canadians who want to have it. It will be offered, and it's a matter of the provinces and territories executing that plan.
The plan is already underway in the Northwest Territories. Clinics began today targeting 12 and up. Students in Yellowknife are currently learning from home after an outbreak at an elementary school. Next Monday starts what Quebec calls the Week of the Youth, opening up vaccinations to 18 to 34-year-olds. And the province is preparing to start with 12 and up before the end of the school year, with second doses before students return in the fall.
We are doing, working, and my colleague can say, with the schools boards and with the schools to make the things easy.
We were so pleased with this news because it's good for the people that will be vaccinated, but it will be good for the population in general because, as we said, we're back to school in September.
No solid timeline in Ontario. Right now, officials think teens will start getting vaccinated in June.
We are actively discussing and thinking about how will we approach the 12 to 18-year-old, specifically the 12 to 16 that just had additional approval. So I can't specifically tell you when that will occur.
Officials maintain that the goal is to give both adults and adolescents both doses by September and say supply will meet demand. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia.
And in Alberta, the rise in daily new COVID cases has been relentless. Today, another 2,200 cases.
As Carolyn Dunn tells us, tougher restrictions don't kick in until next week, which means a few more days of relative freedom.
For many businesses, each shutdown has been harder than the last.
No, I just wish that they would do it, across the board and not just make small businesses suffer. That's all. I don't think it's done properly, and I don't think people are going to follow the rules anyway, but, some of us have to pay the price for that, which is sad.
This hair salon is extending its hours, trying to squeeze in as many customers as it can before closing down for the third time. Alberta's patios are bustling too. A birthday lunch today for the Peno family.
Trying to make the best of it, just enjoy it while we can.
But they're disappointed they may not have a chance to do this again soon. A few tables over, the Foxes echo that.
I think it's a very difficult position to be in, and I just don't know if anyone's doing the right thing right now. But I do not believe the spread is coming from small business.
But the time for fine-tuning restrictions is over, says the province's top doctor.
Cases have risen to the point that we cannot simply target one sector or group. We don't yet know if we have hit the peak of new cases.
The latest restrictions come weeks after many medical experts began raising the alarms about COVID cases spiking and starting to strain the healthcare system.
My first reaction was relief. I have concerns with the priorities set out by these restrictions. So the example that comes to mind is that schools have been closed, but malls are still open.
The province is imposing its strictest capacity limits, but health authorities say it's a struggle to determine what's essential and what's not. The measures are designed to work in conjunction with vaccinations that are ramping up quickly. More than 100,000 Albertans under the age of 30 booked their first shot today. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
To Ontario now, where there are growing calls for police to investigate what happened in long-term care homes during the pandemic.
Lorenda Rennicop tells us it comes as we're learning the full investigation promised last year by Premier Doug Ford never happened.
Criminal charges or accountability.
Kathy Parks first went to Durham Police about the deaths at Orchard Villa almost a year ago. She's also part of a class action lawsuit against the home. Her father, Paul, died at Orchard Villa with COVID-19, but she believes it was also because of neglect.
I think that he went without food. I know he went without water. I saw what he looked like in his casket when we had a viewing, and it was a completely different man than I had seen just weeks before.
She says police told her they were waiting for the final report by the COVID-19 Long-Term Care Commission released last Friday. Durham Regional Police say they are reviewing the details of the report, and this remains an ongoing investigation. We don't have anything further to add at this point. The Long-Term Care Commission report included observations from the military, including one member who said their team noted 26 residents died due to dehydration prior to the arrival of the CAF team due to the lack of staff to care for them. They died when all they needed was water and a wipe down. Last year, after the horrific report by the military on what they found, the Premier said this.
As soon as we received these reports, we launched a full investigation into these allegations. This includes an investigation by Ontario's Chief Coroner. The results of these investigations will be shared with police.
But yesterday, this from the Solicitor General.
Investigations would not happen at a provincial level or a ministry level.
And today in question period,
there's just no evidence that the Premier actually followed through on his promise for an investigation. There was no investigation.
The long-term care minister says long-term care inspectors looked into the homes and then posted their reports.
Had inspectors found potentially criminal conduct, they would have passed that information on to the police.
Today, the NDP wrote to the Ontario Provincial Police asking them to investigate the deaths in long-term care. Kathy Parks wants justice for her dad and others who died.
He was a caring person, and he deserved to be cared for.
She says Durham Police told her they'll have an update for her next week. Lorenda Rennicop, CBC News, Toronto.
To India now, where more than 400,000 COVID-19 cases were reported today, along with nearly 4,000 deaths. Both are new records.
Salima Shivji looks at Canada's part in a global push for aid for a medical system on the brink of collapse.
Scenes like this in rural India hit hard. Makeshift hospitals set up just about anywhere. There's a desperate search for supplies and agony when it's too late. My wife didn't get the medicine she needed to survive, he says. That visceral pain has pushed many in Canada to donate. For Thierry Nawar, the scale of the crisis struck him when he reached out to his friend Govind in Delhi.
Well, the conditions are very critical.
That's what pushed him to fundraise from Ottawa.
When he actually started giving me his own account of what was going on, this was no longer a news story. This was actually a real situation on the ground.
NGOs have sprung into action, highlighting the urgency.
There's a need for everything people are committing to at the moment, plus more. Equipment is just one side of the story.
It's what many of India's allies are sending, planes full of oxygen supplies and antiviral drugs. Canada has thousands of vials of remdesivir and 50 ventilators in the air right now. The other 300 it has pledged aren't yet ready to send. They might leave next week. Not soon enough for many.
What dent is it going to make? I think the quick answer is very little. Not because it's not a kind gesture, but because India is a massive country.
And the short-term need is just too great. The long-term solution, jabs in arms, too far off. The immediate concern is the struggle to coordinate and distribute all those supplies. It's proving difficult for an Indian government that swears it's streamlining and working 24/7. But on the front lines, complaints that the aid isn't being felt. And with the brutal second wave still raging, health experts warn a third wave in India is also inevitable. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ottawa.
And back here at home, and for the second summer in a row, young Canadians face meager prospects for summer jobs.
Jacqueline Hansen shows us how COVID-19 makes the competition fierce and disappointment all too common.
Emily Doucette hoped to make enough money this summer to start her master's degree in education debt-free.
I have to take loans at this point. Even if I get a job, it's not going to fund my whole year.
Lockdown after lockdown means a lucrative serving job isn't an option, and the Canada Emergency Student Benefit isn't being renewed. So she's trying to piece together gigs as an online tutor.
The hours are a lot less, obviously not even close to what I was doing before, but I don't think I will get there no matter how hard I try.
It's competitive because she's far from alone. Compared to pre-pandemic, there are still 120,000 young women out of work and nearly 40,000 young men.
How we're gonna space out.
Across the country, 70,000 youth usually work at summer camps, but which camps can go ahead is still uncertain.
Those staff right now are waiting patiently as we continue to work with public health.
2 rough summers in a row could even put future jobs at risk if the camps don't survive.
The need for continued government support is prevalent and is going to be business saving for many of us who have been pouring our life and soul into these places.
16-year-old Finn Blakey tried to get a head start on his summer. He got a job as a dishwasher last month.
The day before I was supposed to start, they shut down for COVID.
A setback for this year and maybe others.
This would be a time where I'd be experimenting with different jobs and things.
This economist says reopenings will bring rehiring.
If the vaccine rollout can proceed in a timely fashion and is effective at bringing COVID cases down, that there's reason for optimism.
But it's not yet clear how much of this summer could possibly be saved for the businesses and the workers who rely on it most. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, children from the age of 12 to 16 are now part of BC's COVID vaccination plan. We're going to speak to a doctor at BC Children's about what it all means next.
Roy Henry Vickers paints from remembrances, images etched on his memory and on the emulsion of film. The image he contributed to the Trans-Canada Trail Foundation was a moment in time from a hunting trip to the Rockies and a dawn hike that led him smack dab into the center of an elk herd.
In the intenseness of the moment, I was paying attention to nothing else but the sounds and those elk moving. And when it was all over and the elk had gone, I took a deep breath and I looked around, and the morning was really calm, and there was a forest fire somewhere to the north of us, probably about 50 to 100 miles away, and the smoke had drifted into the head of the valley where we were, and it was lying in layers of thin ribbons. It was beautiful.
Vickers has been commissioned to produce 3 more pictures. They'll be reproduced as cards, posters, and limited edition prints. A percentage of the sales will go towards completing the BC section of the Trans-Canada Trail, a 10,000-mile recreational ribbon that will link up existing trails like this one on Vancouver Island with new trails through parks and private land.
Thank you very much for having me part of the foundation.
Roy Henry Vickers is just one of a number of BC artists who contributed to the Trail Foundation. So has former Yukon painter Ted Harrison, Linda Frimmer from Vancouver, and Hornby Island painter Graham Herbert. They're artists who hope their contribution will help us to see and experience the Canadian landscape, the inspiration for so much of their work.
As a person who lives their life in the outdoors just as much as I do indoors, and who lives close to the earth, I would want to put in my 2 bits worth into the operation and let people know how I feel about this country.
The Trans-Canada Trail is scheduled to open July 1st in the year 2000.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I was in shock. I'm still in shock, and I didn't know how to process it.
A Vancouver Island mother whose 12-year-old daughter died last month is pleading for more long-term drug treatment programs at facilities for children. She suspects her daughter died from a heroin overdose. Child advocates say there is a gap in services for families.
It was just strange. You know, you hire a realtor to sell your property. It seems like that's their purpose in life, and we couldn't understand.
A Fraser Valley man has a warning for home sellers. He and his wife are being sued by their real estate agency after the buyer backed out of a sale. The buyer had put down a $70,000 non-refundable deposit, and the realtor wants commission on that money.
The person is a woman in their 40s. She is stable and currently receiving treatment in a hospital in Vancouver Coastal Health.
BC reports its first case of a blood clot from the AstraZeneca vaccine, but Dr. Henry maintains the condition is extremely rare. Meanwhile, vaccinations are ramping up across the Lower Mainland, with the province adding several clinics in Fraser Health and Vancouver Coastal Health.
As we told you last night, vaccinating people as young as 12 will soon be part of BC's COVID immunization plan. And to talk about this more is Dr. Rand Goldman. He's a professor at UBC and a pediatrician at Children's Hospital. Dr. Goldman, thanks for joining us tonight. First, your thoughts on the Pfizer vaccine for adolescents.
I think that's a welcome addition to our fight in this pandemic. I think that as part of reaching herd immunity, we do need adolescents 12 to 15 to get a shot in their arms.
And how was that decision reached to bring it down from 16 years of age to 12?
Listen, any decision making when it comes to medications or vaccines need to be done with evidence. I know that Pfizer have done studies related to this, and most recently in the end of March, they suggested that their study shows very high effectiveness of the vaccine in this age group of 12 to 15. So once it's effective and safe, because safety is critical, that was the recommendation, and that's how they applied for Health Canada to give the vaccine. Health Canada just this week was the first country to approve this for this age of population.
So there obviously has to be a clinical trial. These are, adolescents. How does that work, the clinical trial?
Clinical trials are essential to approving or getting evidence on anything we use in humans. And what happened in this clinical trial is there were two groups of adolescents. One group received the vaccine and the other didn't. And then they were followed up to see who was sick with COVID-19. What we hear is that the group that received the vaccine, no one caught COVID-19 and wasn't sick, while 18 of the adolescents from a group of about 1,100 that did not receive the vaccine ended up having the illness.
All right, so what do you say to parents and perhaps to those adolescents who still have concerns?
You know, people have questions, both parents and adolescents, questions about the safety of the vaccine and whether they should take it. And I think those are excellent questions. People need to make sure they have all the information. And what I do tell people is if they have questions, they should ask their pediatrician or family physician or a nurse that looks after them. Ask the questions if you're concerned or if you want to know more. This is critical because we need shots in every arm. In order to get this pandemic under control, this is critical. And as you know, Mike, herd immunity is reached with 75 or 80% of the population receiving the vaccine. In order to reach that stage, we really have to get adolescents and maybe even younger children into the vaccine program and get a shot.
All right, well, we'll see where that goes down the road, but we appreciate your time tonight. Dr. Goldman, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a Brexit fight that centered on a tiny island off the coast of France. Why British warships to the Channel Islands next.
6:41, there's a live shot. The murky port on this Thursday evening. The showers and the cold front did arrive, as Johanna said they would. So what about tomorrow? What about the weekend? We're going to find out from Joe next.
A very well-traveled bottle of French wine is up for sale. The 2000 vintage red from Bordeaux spent 14 months maturing aboard the International Space Station. The bottle is one of 12 sent into orbit, traveling about 300 million kilometers. It's being sold in a package that includes a special handmade case, a decanter, glasses, and a bottle of the same wine that did not go into space, in case you want to compare the two. Also a corkscrew made from a meteorite. It's expected to sell for about $1 million US, and that money will go towards funding future space missions.
That's a good idea. Certainly hope it isn't corked at this point, Joe. And it must have been really tempting for the astronauts on the ISS not to crack the thing open while they're up there. But I guess they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to drink up there, I guess.
Yeah, I can see them sort of saying, "Should we? We could replace it with some kind of other orange juice liquid up here." Yeah, I'm sure they didn't. But if we pool our funds, we'll still be nowhere close. No. Never mind.
Yeah, we won't be close. No, exactly.
No, not at all. But it is a nice showery evening to, uncork whatever $12 brand you've got in the kitchen. It's showery and it's going to be cool, and that's the name of the game for the next 24 hours. Take a look at the radar right now. I mentioned earlier the showers were just starting to fall down across North Van. You can see on the current radar shot lots of showers happening across most of Metro Vancouver. We've got this sort of southwesterly flow behind the cold front that's actually now tracking through the valley. So showery for the next couple of hours, but notice across the strait, that's actually clearing skies. So let me take you through the model that I think is handling this pretty well. Through the overnight, we'll actually see some clearing skies, maybe even a peek at the sun before it drops down in the next hour. But taking you through the overnight, showers are still in the forecast. So we'll continue to see them through tomorrow morning. I think probably our best shot is pre-dawn, bit of a break through your 7 a.m. run. And then as we get into mid-morning hours, showers back. So it's really an on again, off again Friday. And that's the story for Saturday as well, but a better chance of seeing more clouds for your Saturday forecast. So it's not an all rain event, but behind this cold front, it certainly is unsettled as that tracks across the interior, bringing showers tomorrow. Here's a snapshot tomorrow night. So we're in between systems, but notice what's moving in off the Pacific coast. That's what may bring us some more showers for Saturday. It's another fast mover, though. So the models are at least in agreement with Sunday. No matter how the next 2 days plays out, Sunday is looking sunny. A quick check at the conditions across the province tomorrow. It is going to be cool for everyone. We could see some sunny breaks. Again, it's not an all-day event, but definitely also looking for showers. And you can see those cooler temperatures showing up there. We rebound with that sun for Sunday, and early next week, looks like we get into another little nice warm-up. But at least for anyone celebrating Mother's Day, that half the weekend, looking pretty good, Mike and Anita.
Not bad. One half of the weekend, well, it's acceptable, so that's okay.
Exactly.
Thanks, Joe.
Yes, glass half full.
It's Mother's Day too, so
wine glass too.
Yeah.
Well, a small self-governing island in the English Channel has become a flashpoint in the latest fallout from Brexit, Britain's departure from the European Union.
Naval ships from both the UK and France converged on Jersey because of a dispute over fishing rights.
CBC's Tessa Ursula has the details from London.
Dark skies hung over troubled waters as around 60 French fishing vessels charged towards the main port of Jersey. Armed with flares and a steely determination to express their outrage over their fishing rights in UK waters in this post-Brexit world. If things don't go back to normal, he says, we won't be able to survive.
I think this is an absolutely typical French way of making a protest. You say fierce things, you make big gestures, but in the end, it's a cry for attention.
Attention they did get. The British government sent 2 Royal Navy warships, keeping their distance, but there to reassure Jersey.
the French responded in kind, sending 2 Navy ships of their own. This tit-for-tat goes all the way back to that hard-fought post-Brexit trade deal. A new fishing licensing scheme kicked in last week, and French fishers say Jersey-issued licenses have now come with restrictive new conditions they were never told about, which they say could kill up to 80% of their fleet. Jersey officials maintain they're complying with the deal.
They cannot live without France. What do they want? They want to sell their fish in France, but they don't want us to continue to catch or fish in their waters.
Today's drama in the seas had a hint of déjà vu. In 2018, a battle brewed off the coast of Normandy as fishers from historic rivals England and France fought over scallop harvesting rights. If today's events are anything to go by, it could be a bumpy post-Brexit ride for some time to come. There were signs that the spat could escalate. After France's maritime minister threatened to cut off the island's electricity, more than 90% of which comes from France.
We have leant over backwards to accommodate the concerns of the French, and at some stage we have to hold our ground.
Talks have started, and vessels on both sides have retreated, but an undercurrent remains. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, London.
It is being dubbed Super Thursday in the UK. Millions of people casting ballots in sweeping elections amid the pandemic.
Along with parliamentary elections in Scotland and Wales, civic leadership is also on the ballot, including the race for the Mayor of London. Renee Filipponi has more from the campaign trail.
I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for Mayor of London.
It's one door at a time for this mayoral candidate at a housing complex in South London.
Here you're going to be voting for us in the elections next week.
Louisa Porritt says there is a sense of hope.
Our vaccinations programme is going well here in the UK, thankfully, so we're looking to unlock further. And so people want to plan for the future.
And she has a pitch to take advantage of the pandemic and reports working from home may become permanent for many.
Got a once-in-a-generational opportunity to finally fix our housing crisis by, for example, converting some of the empty office space coming onto the market into quality, affordable housing.
London may be getting back to business, but the pandemic still looms large. Its economy was hit harder than anywhere else in the UK.
2 weeks today.
During the campaign, COVID recovery has been top of mind.
I've got a plan that's focused on jobs.
Incumbent Labour Mayor Sadiq Khan is far ahead in the polls. He is promising voters he will get people back to work and bring life back to the city. It's a similar post-COVID platform to his Conservative competitor, Sean Bailey. But there are an unprecedented 20 options for voters, including candidates promising no lockdowns ever again. And that's what pub manager Gary Murphy wants to hear.
I've yet to decide who I'm going to vote for, but it certainly will be for a smaller, more independent party that is committed to getting us back to normal.
He says this pub, built in the 1600s, has survived the plague, cholera, and the Spanish flu. But COVID nearly took it under, and he blames politicians.
It doesn't matter if they promise to pretty up the high street. If we're still restricted or under the threat of closure, we're never going to recover.
But Murphy and the rest of London will need to wait until the weekend for results, with current COVID restrictions slowing down the count. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
Well, you've probably heard of virus-sniffing dogs, but how about virus-sniffing honeybees? The news that has scientists abuzz next.
It provides people with information about what's going on in their neighborhood. You can't really get this in the daily papers. They don't have room for this kind of in-depth reporting. I'm Sheila Blinoff, and I'm the last one standing who's been involved with the paper for almost 50 years.
What was it that kept you around at the paper all those years?
I loved it. I always said it was the best job in the world. And it was. I had more or less autonomy. I worked with a lot of creative and pleasant people. Mostly, I had a team of nearly 300 volunteers, and I saw people at their best wanting to be helpful. So.
Are you able to settle the argument of the beach or the beaches?
The last referendum was run by the paper at the request of the city, and beach won by a few points. So it's beach as far as I'm concerned. About 25 years ago, the city put up signs, beaches, overnight, and people brought out ladders, climbed down and tore them down on Queen Street.
In fact, I may be responsible for that, for what Sheila said about people tearing down the signs, because I did a cartoon soon after that debate where I showed this character that I created. I believe I called her Edith Brumby. Just this spunky old senior that was climbing up a ladder and tearing down the sign. So that may have resulted in some people actually doing it. Sorry. My name is Bill Suddick. I've been the cartoonist for the Beach Metro News for, I think it's 40 years now.
What are some of your favorite things to draw?
I have a lot of fun with basically making fun of coaches and teachers and politicians. I'm kind of a loose cannon in that respect. When people come up to me in the street and say, Bill, I really loved your cartoon, it makes me feel good. That's what I want to do. I just want to make people smile a bit and maybe think a bit about, some of the things that are going on in the community.
So my name's Ali. I'm a reporter with the Beach Metro News. I've been here for about a year, and I'm one of the newest members of the staff.
As a young reporter, what keeps you motivated doing community news?
We still have a lot of readers that do rely on the physical print edition, which helps us keep us going, but it also gives us kind of that more comfort in kind of developing a digital strategy. I like that kind of up-close feel I get with reporting in the community. There's just a treasure trove of stories in the community that are kind of ignored by traditional media. I feel at this point, it's kind of almost like a mission of mine now to get them out there.
What do you hope happens in the future of the paper?
It goes on, it continues, it just gets better and better.
Hi, I'm Amy Bao, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is a proud returning sponsor of the 20th annual Doxa Documentary Film Festival. Get your tickets and watch amazing films from the comfort of your own home, May 6th to 16th. Learn more at doxafestival.ca. And the CBC News Vancouver team wants to see your beautiful photos of beautiful British Columbia. Email your photos to bcphotos@cbc.ca for your chance to be featured.
Well, honeybees are known for having a keen sense of smell, as much as 100 times more sensitive than a human.
In the Netherlands, scientists are putting that to good use during this pandemic.
They've trained bees to detect COVID-19 in seconds at a time when test results can take days. Here's a look.
We take the bees from a honeybee keeper here in the region, and we use a set of bees every day. And we put those bees in harnesses to fix them. And then we present coronavirus positive and coronavirus negative samples. And after presenting a positive sample, we always present sugar water afterwards. And in that way, we can train bees pretty quickly. It can be useful because you can train bees also in regions where there are no test materials available. And you could use the system to smell coronavirus positive samples. And the next step is not very complicated. We need to develop or improve the machine to put the bees in. And after that's developed, the system could work pretty rapidly.
That's pretty brilliant when you think about it. Training bees to sniff out the COVID virus. It's just...
Nothing surprises me anymore. Our science is pretty incredible.
Yes, yeah. That is really incredible for sure. Okay, that's all the time we have tonight. Just a quick reminder, you can Always watch our newscasts online anytime at cbc.ca/BC.
Dan Burrett is here at 11 o'clock after the National with your next local news. Good night.
Good night.